Quorum maker. All right. I would like to call to order the Salem Kaiser Air Transportation Study for Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. Lyle's trying to get in. So Commissioner Mordhorst is coming on. So we'll do introductions. And we'll start with our staff members with Lori, if you want to come around the room and they'll get on the screen. Lori Moore, Council of Government Scats.
Teresa Wizenheidt, Council of Government Scats.
Dobrinich, I'm a planner for SCATS. Mike Jaffe, I'm a transportation planning director here at SCATS.
Julie Warnicki, City of Salem, Public Works staff.
Virginia Stapleton, I'm the alternate here for Trevor Phillips, representing the city of Salem.
I'm gonna go to the corner.
Me?
Yep.
Bonnie Radke, Marion County.
I'm Kathy Clark, Mayor, City of Kaiser.
Delazzini, City of Almsville, Council President.
Kevin Cameron, Lieutenant Governor. Marion County Commission. Mark Bernard, Dakota Region 2 Principal Planner.
And Jacqueline Green, might be the Kaiser Neighborhood Association. Tammy Kunz, Community Diversity Engagement Committee for Kaiser.
Okay, and on screen, Anna.
Anna Henson ODOT, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person today. I just had back-to-back meetings.
Life happens. Glad you're on screen. Lyle?
Well, I'm Mordor, Polk County, and again, sorry I'm not there too. I'd love to be.
And Maria?
Maria Hinojos Presi, Salem Kaiser School Board Director.
Sarah?
Sarah Duncan, Salem Area Mass Transit Board.
Sadie?
Hi, everybody. Sadie Carney, representing the Chariots Board, and I am on the board representing Subdistrict 3 here in Salem.
Okay. And let's see. Those are all computers on. Nick?
Oh, hi, Nick Forty, West Salem Neighbor Association Transportation Chair.
Okay, and Kim is, oh, you're right here. So yeah, this is yeah, you're on screen. All right, anybody I miss? All right, so first order of business is approval of the policy committee minutes from May 23rd, 2023. Were there any additions or corrections to note?
Here, I'll move the minutes for May 23rd.
Motion to approve. Need a second?
Well, I will second.
All right, Commissioner Cameron moves, Commissioner Mordhorst seconds. Any further discussion?
I'd like to abstain. There was not.
All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any no's, say no. Abstentions? Right here, aye. Okay, so motion carries with one abstention from Salem. Public comment this time is provided for members of the public to address the policy committee. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to the committee today? Get Nick, Tammy, and Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Nope. Oh, not this time. All right, then we will go on to the Verda Lane additional funding request. Steve.
Okay, thanks. So there is a memo in your packet, agenda item D, and then I'm also pulling up a slideshow presentation, which has pretty much the same information, just a couple setup differences as I share my screen here. Okay, so this is a conversation that we've been having at the TAC level with staff from the various jurisdictions, both about Verda Lane as well as other projects, about essentially cost escalations that are happening right now and causing a number of projects to come in with bids that are higher than what was initially expected and initially programmed into the tip. So we're visiting some of these projects as we as they come up and having these discussions. So the current one is Verda Lane. This is essentially we want to talk about today is we kind of do a review of our policy for, well, let Janelle in. Policy for adding additional funds to existing projects, which this is an existing project that's in the tip. We'll talk a little bit about the details of the Verda project, and then the idea is there's a resolution in the packet, which is to approve funds for the addition of funds for preliminary engineering right-of-way phases. We're going to handle the construction phase separate from that, and I'll get to that later in the presentation. So just to kind of recap, back in January, the policy committee adopted this policy, which was to essentially make completing projects in the tip a priority over adding new projects. So that was kind of the culmination of a discussion that happened in 2020, I guess started in 2021 and 2022. But as projects were coming in higher than expected, and the 24-29 tip was being developed, it just became clear that there wasn't enough funding available to be adding additional projects. And what the idea at the time was to, hey, let's prioritize projects that have already have committed funds to them so that they're being completed all the way start to finish before getting to additional projects. So this is the language that was adopted at that time. You know, part of it is, you know, we're going to commit to projects that are programmed earlier and commit to them as they come up. And then the other part was to make sure that our project sponsors are going through the process to consider any reasonable cost reduction options before requesting any additional funds. So it's important to just kind of quickly look at our unprogrammed funds. And, oh, Sadie has her hands up. Would you like to ask questions, Sadie?
It might be more appropriate at the end. It was just about the policy that we adopted and whether or not sort of time boxing that or putting a sunset on it would give us the opportunity to revisit it in a thoughtful way at some point in the future.
Yeah, I don't think there's any language about that right now. But that's definitely, I think, something we could talk about as a group. Is, you know, is this something that we're committing to long-term, or is it something that, you know, because of the current situation with funding, is it something that we're kind of piecing together the current listed tip projects? So this slide just kind of gives a high-level snapshot of our unprogrammed federal funds for transportation through 2027. So that's where you see the approximately $8 million. That's likely to shift somewhat just based on our allocations and other changes with project costs. But we essentially have this 838,000 through the end of this tip, which is, I guess, complete on September 30th of this year. And then an additional 7.2 million, which is unprogrammed at this time for the next tip. So I'll just leave that there for now. So that's kind of like what we have available to work with at this point. And I should point out it's that 8 million or that 7.2, it becomes available year by year. So it's not like we have that in hand right now to dedicate to a project in, you know, year 2023 or 2024. So this is a look at what is currently programmed for the Verda project. What's in the STIP and the TIP is 4.074 million total. And 3.4 of that is federal dollars from SCATs. And then the rest is a combination of match and then overmatch that the city of Kaiser has provided. So it's in 3 phases, essentially: the preliminary engineering, right-of-way, and construction phases. This slide is just a quick look at where the project actually is. So the project, it runs from Dearborn Avenue to Ascot Lane along Verda. And one of the points of discussion that came up with the TAC was about the realignment of Claxter Road. So part of the proposal is to make the alignment with Alder Drive direct. So there's a purchase of a property here, and we'll be realigning Claxter to come in directly into Alder Lane. It's only about 80 feet between the two intersections, so it's a little bit of a safety hazard as it is right now. And so ODOT's delivering the project. They did do a cost estimate of what savings would there be if the project didn't include this realignment. And we found that it was about a savings of, I think, about $500,000. And just judging by the benefits of the realignment, the TAC just essentially said, you know what, we think we should keep this as part of the project. We looked at it, but it feels like it should stay as part of the project. The last note here is that, so we're kind of set up this whole conversation is that there was an estimate that for the project that came in about $5.4 million over what's currently programmed, which is pretty significant when you think about that $4 million price tag that was.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Just want to point to that slide. Can you point where the schools are, in case people don't know where these schools are?
Yeah, so over here, there's Weddell School and Claggett Creek Middle School. There's I think quite a bit of school traffic that goes up and down Alder from Verda. And then there is another school, I'm probably gonna miss it, but it's over kind of north or east of the project.
Yeah, keep going north of Dearborn and you'll hit Kennedy Elementary.
Okay,
So it's above where the picture cuts off.
Yeah.
okay, so up here somewhere in the white space.
Yeah, Commissioner Cameron?
Is there any safe routes to school money going into this? Any of this project?
Not currently, no.
No, we didn't submit this for safe routes to school construction. We have activities in terms of how students travel back and forth. Kennedy has a very active program. We're doing some improvements. The city is on the other side of the two schools at Alder and Brooks to improve our safe route to school for students on that side of Verda Lane. This is going to make a significant difference for the students living on the east side of Verda.
Well, I assume there's gonna be bike lanes, et cetera, and
This is a full urban upgrade. And so let me jump in.
Yep, please.
This is a full multimodal upgrade. This already has a transit line on it. It's used by freight. It comes off the parkway. Serves Title I schools and the Southeast Kaiser neighborhood area. It is the result of many years of pretty much dealing with going from a rural unincorporated area into using Verda Lane as I think it's a minor arterial. If I remember the functional classification correctly.
Probably right, yeah.
We have gaps in the sidewalks that are not likely to be addressed because those properties will not redevelop. They are residential. They're going to stay that way. We need to address the lack of bike lanes and make sure that we have really clear and easy access for transit along that route, which is a well-used one that goes to Kaiser Station Transit Center. This has been one of the top priorities identified for a full Great Street or urban upgrade, whatever you want to call it, making it work for whatever mode people are choosing to use. The next one after this will be Wheatland, same idea. Again, we're going from a very rural design, or not so much design, just happened, to an intentional design for all of the uses that move through this area.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
So I was going to go to
Sure.
Sadie Carney first, and then I'll come to Councilor Stapleton.
Oh, thank you. And just if somebody could help me understand the tax reasoning on the realignment of Claxter. I mean, when I look at it aerially and I'm looking on my phone at this alignment, I can understand why, but is it mostly to I also noticed that, at least from what I'm looking at, it looks like, I'm not sure Claxter has sidewalk infrastructure that is consistent, and they certainly don't appear to have bike lanes or any kind of striping, and I'm not surprised. And I don't know that that would be part of the realignment, but it might be useful to know if it was. Is the idea just that that would improve circulation for people that want to go up North Side Drive or come down North Side Drive and connect to Alder? Or it would
Well,
improve the safety of a left-hand turn off Claxter?
All of it was improved safety and line of sight for all modes of travel along that intersection, especially when you're getting the crossing to the schools, because you have students that are being directed, if they're coming from the east side of Verda, they're coming down Claxter, and they have to walk along. There will be eventually a sidewalk, but this is to line it all up so it's going to be safer for all modes to function in that intersection space.
Yeah, I would say generally you don't like these kind of non-perpendicular intersections where the
Yeah.
driver has to look behind them to see if it's safe. Also, because they're so closely spaced, you have multiple conflict points. You know, people
Yeah.
turning left here, left there, trying to put all the movements in one location is safer.
Mhm. And does the realignment include upgrades to more of Claxter? I mean, aside from just the realignment to get it, you know,
I
lined
don't
up
know.
with Alder.
I don't know if we know yet how much of Claxter would be affected, maybe a little bit of it, but I don't know. I think they're still design it, so I don't know.
The
It
rest of
seemed to me that
Claxter-
would have a big bearing on the cost is the reason for the question.
I don't think we're going far up Claxter.
No.
Claxter might be 100 feet or something like that, so. I would-
Okay.
And
Thanks.
and the rest of Claxter is included in our transportation system plan for completion of sidewalks and so forth in our neighborhood plan. So what we did when we did our TSP was we identified all of the neighborhood sections, so not street by street or address by address, but by sector, where the sidewalks are inconsistent, incomplete, or missing. So that's been identified through that process, and then we are prioritizing as we can to complete, fill in, or find other funding through our local gas tax. If that helps. Counselor Stapleton.
Just a quick question for you. When I hear urban upgrade, I think 3 lanes with the center turn lane. Is that what this is going to look like? Or is it just going to be the 2 lanes with additional multimodal transportation?
Yeah, I don't believe that I see Kathy shake your head, so no center turn lane.
There's not enough right of way for that. So the priority is to get the stormwater, bike lane, pedestrian, everything complete along that entire corridor. There's a lot of missing pieces and narrow spaces, and we also have some elevation challenges with stormwater and so forth that have to be addressed as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
So Steve has more slides to get through.
Sorry, Steve, I jumped
Are
in.
you anxious to ask these questions?
Well,
So
and I will just mention, just questions about cost in general, that stormwater mitigation is one of the big reasons for the cost of this project that Kathy touched on. There's quite a bit of stormwater mitigation work that's going to go on or be improved along the corridor. And I can't talk about the specifics of that necessarily, but I know that's one of the reasons that the quotes have, not necessarily why they increase, but why they are in the range that they are. So this part of the presentation, I'm going to just get a little bit more into the numbers and try not to get too into the weeds with it. And so what we're seeing here is a look at the current program project cost. So this is what's in the tip and the first column of numbers, followed by the estimate that was received in March. And so the total increase is your third column there. On this next slide, kind of open up a little bit more the required batch and then some of the additional overmatch dollars that are going to be provided. So I wanted to highlight, so there's a little more than $500,000 in required match. The city of Kaiser has agreed to put in obviously the required local match, but also in addition to that, they've said that they can provide up to $2 million in additional funds for the project. So that additional overmatch, which is about 1.4 million, goes a lot further to help with reducing the amount of federal funds that we have to request for this project. And for SCATs, that's kind of the process that we're going through is how do we balance the federal funds available to get these projects completed? So it's a huge support when communities are able to provide additional overmatch, but beyond what's just required by the federal government. Okay, so then this last slide of numbers, I say that there's probably more slides of numbers. Of this series of slide with numbers is a look at the federal amount needed. So that's the 3.4 million, and the unprogrammed funds. So remember, I was talking about that approximate 8 million through 2027. This 4.5 million is our reduction off that 8 million if this Verda project is fully funded through construction. And we're not necessarily going to talk about funding it through construction today or prove that, but I just want to note that. So that kind of just brings us to our decision point and then some additional discussion. So the SCATS TAC has recommended the approval of using unprogrammed funds for the shortfall in the preliminary engineering and the right-of-way phases. Those are the two smaller pieces. The construction is where most of the cost increases. So they've recommended to add $784,000 total to the project, and a portion of that is federal funds and then the required match. And that's the resolution in the packet for today. And so I'll kind of pause here for discussion and thoughts, and then we can kind of push on to talk about the construction phase a little bit as well.
Thank you. Questions at this point?
I have one. Sorry, I just can't get to
Director
my.
Carney.
Sorry, I'm working just on my laptop today, so I usually have two screens to work with. I apologize for my slowness. The stormwater capture, is that like green streets improvements and things like that? I know there's a lot of that happens in Kaiser, and I'm just curious.
This is part of our MPDES requirements under the stormwater utility. So we have requirements for all of our projects, both public and on private land, to do stormwater mitigation. So this is going to be in compliance with that.
More insights on the
Okay.
stormwater issues than Steve has, so.
No, I do, and I think Bill Lawyer.
Lawyer,
would be,
yeah.
the expert on that.
Yeah, and we have our environmental division handles this portion of the design and requirements to comply with federal regulations. Great question. Anything else?
You got a few more slides, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just next steps after that decision point on the preliminary engineering and the right of way is to discuss longer term the funding of the construction phase. So there is an estimated shortfall or an estimated need of 2.7 million in federal dollars for this. The TAC has approved this additional funding for construction conceptually. I just need to do a little bit more work on what funding source the MPO is going to use and then what year it's going to be programmed. So I'm not asking for an approval on this, but wanted to inform that this is something that the TAC has been discussing. This group can talk about, whether they conceptually agree with funding the construction phase as well. But this will essentially come back to you at a later date, either probably later this summer at some point. So, and then a little bit longer term. So I think that was kind of the medium term. The longer term is to discuss potentially as needed slipping an existing project that is in either 2026 or 2027 for construction on to 2028. So that additional funds could be used for projects that are in the current tip. So I think that discussion is kind of best held a little bit later, but just to, these are the projects, the Commercial Street to Vista sidewalk and signal project, and then State Street to 46th Avenue. Those are the projects that are latest in the current tip in terms of programming and would be the most likely candidates to be slipped to the next MTIP cycle. So I hope that, does that all make sense? Kind of the staging and, all the pieces. There was an appendix in the memo, and that illustrates some of the projects that have current federal funding from SCATs, and we are likely or may possibly need additional federal funds. So that's why we're talking about the potential to slip another project.
Yeah, so we're having these discussions with staff wise, but also the TAC saying, what does Verda need? In right away today it needs. What is down the road is going to need more construction funding. We're not sure exactly how much. We have an estimate of it would probably be, but you know, costs are going. It's an estimate. And then down the road, there's in this appendix, there's other projects coming in the pipeline, maybe press, which I think we have a bid on construction, but there's some other projects which are outlined in Appendix A. We're trying to keep it just aware of these other projects so that hey, if we spend money on Verda, or spend money on Gilchrist, here are the things that come after it. And will we have enough funds for those, or do we have to make adjustments?
So one thing I'd like to throw out there and get it on the record, in the past where we've had gyrations in the economy and we've had projects that are ready to go, and then we've had to find more money. But we've got some time and the cost may come down. We've seen this happen before several years ago, and I'm talking about state and sublimity, is that if we do shift things down a little bit, to do so and say on the record that it is our intention, if these projects come in at a lower cost because inflation it is cooling, to make sure that those projects remain in line and eligible for funding to push back up. So the willingness to budget now to make sure these projects stay moving forward is important. But I think on the other hand, to the projects that are very important but slipping, remain in line so that they can also move back into that space. It's just a way that we share to make sure that projects get built rather than split up the pie so much that nothing gets done. We did it with state and sublimity. We all threw in on and leaned in hard on the Woodburn interchange. We just did it with Aurora Donald. So regionally speaking, and I'm very, very thankful to have this conversation for a project that's in the city of Kaiser, but is part of the regional system. And to just note for the record that, I support making sure that the other projects which are all extremely important to our region and are getting everything to a fully functional and operational space, that we remain committed to that.
We're trying to be prepared for each contingency, whether costs go up, costs stay kind of where they are, or costs go down. So we can either slip projects, if costs go up, they don't, we can maybe get them funded and not ask for an overmatch. And God willing, prices come down. We have projects that are not in the tip now, but were recommended for funding for this 24-27, but because of the policy, we didn't provide. We still have that list of projects that were prioritized for funding once more funds became available, and we could work with the locals to see how we can fund them. So we have an idea of what we would do in each one of those circumstances.
Commissioner Morhorst?
Yeah, the cost of these estimates coming through, and compared to where they were when they got placed on the STIP. We're gonna be facing this for a while, I'm afraid. All of our projects are facing the same thing. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution 2317 and fund the right-of-way phases for the Verda Lane and keep that project going. I've driven that area. There's places literally where the
I'll
kids
second
have the
the
white
motion.
stripe. Thank you.
Commissioner Morihorse has moved, Commissioner Cameron has seconded. Discussion, Director Pressy.
Now you can now.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to know if we also need to include in the motion, like if we're going to be slipping one of these projects, one of the suggested projects, be it like commercial street or State Street projects.
No,
Do we have to do that?
no, not at this
No,
point.
that was not on the agenda to slip anything.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that, potentially come back to that. I think the next step would be come back and talk about construction for this project. Talk about additional funds for other projects. And then as needed, we would talk about the slipping. Yeah, so it's on the horizon, but not necessarily something we need to, we don't need to make a motion today for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. Could we revisit the language that's in the resolution that the policy committee passed, either as part of this discussion or at a future meeting, to think about kind of what this might mean for us long-term, and whether or not we would want to put any kind of bounds or a sunset on that resolution?
Can I make a recommendation that this is kind of a new idea? And because not everyone's here, city attorney's not here. Maybe we hold that idea for maybe future policy committees. We can have a full discussion on the policy rather than make a motion, change this resolution for that specific policy. I think that's cleaner to do and would involve everyone in the discussion because that wasn't on the agenda for today.
No, I'd agree. But if we could take it up, it just occurred to me as I was reading the language that I agreed to and adopted that maybe we hadn't thought it through to like 2028, which we are now doing.
It's always good to relook and because we're going to be looking at these projects, how are we going to move forward and how each of the members, the projects that each of our members want to bring forward. So a member can change their own prioritization for their projects as well. So I think it's a healthy conversation to have, but it's going to be more around the next tip. Any further discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair, I want to thank you for the support of the projects that we've had, that that this group has moved some money forward so that we can get those completed. I think it's a really good policy to make sure the region gets projects completed. It makes a difference when we go out for so thank you.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Yeah, keep this project moving forward. That takes us to the SCAT 2126 tip amendments. Steve.
Okay, so there's only one tip amendment and this one should be pretty straightforward. It's agenda item E. There's really just a resolution in the packet. But what this is the Salem Area Mass Transit District applied for and received a CMAQ grant from the Department of Environmental Quality. And the grant was funded for a total of close to $1 million. And our role as the MPO is to get it programmed into the TIP and the STIP. So I'm bringing it here for approval to be added as an amendment for a new project. And then just a little bit of background. It's charging infrastructure for new electric buses that are coming in. It's 3 charging power blocks, which I'm told can each power block is able to charge 2 different electric buses at the same time. And then it's really setting up the transit district to be able to operate these new buses that are coming in. There's 10 new zero emission buses that are coming in 2023. and then 5 more in the next kind of like 18 months or so. So this is the infrastructure that's gonna, make that operable. And my understanding is the charging blocks are gonna all go at the Del Webb facility, so that buses can go in, get the charge and then be back on a route. So it's exciting that Chariots is receiving so many of these zero emission buses. So this is kind of the groundwork that makes this possible.
And just to add, this isn't the only money they've had to spend for these charging stations. It's just one part of it. I have no idea how many millions of dollars they are either have invested or will invest to make sure that they have a sufficient infrastructure for charging. So this isn't the whole thing. They're spending a lot more than that.
Mhm.
So Director Carney, I've got a couple questions. We didn't have the breakdown or the match or the project description, so we heard some of it from Mike. Is there anything else you want to add on what this project is going to do for Chariots, or what the match is and what the other phases are?
I'm like looking out for my lifeline Chariot staff member.
I can answer that. It's an 80-20 match. So the federal amount that DEQ is getting in CMAQ funds is 762,000, and then it's 190,000 is what 507. That's what's going into the local match into the project.
Okay.
That's pretty standard for transit projects.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, normally it's on the back. That's why I was looking for it.
Yeah.
It's in the yellow part this time.
Yeah, we didn't have it. I guess we forgot to put a
I could have
table.
put it on the
There it
other
is.
feed, so yeah, I apologize for that.
Okay. Very cool. Any further questions? Motion to approve resolution 2318.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we adopt resolution 2318.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Cameron, seconded by Councilor Stapleton. Any further discussion?
A lot of electricity.
Power up. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying no. There is no objection. Motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, maybe this question for
Yeah.
Director Carney. Can I charge my bike at one of these?
It's not advised, Commissioner. Not advised.
I love it. I'm getting older. I need more electricity.
Although if you like stand in the right spot, you might be able to charge your phone because they're inductive chargers.
That's right.
That is not encouraging. My God.
I just got a tremendous visual from that. So there we go.
Feel the waves in my heart.
Okay, real quick. Let's go to item F, MPO composition cooperative agreement.
Thank you. So I've got a slideshow for you, a few slides to go over the background and then your discussion after that. In your packet, there's information that I'll get to in a minute. So let me go through the slideshow and then see questions and discussion. So you may recall that I believe it was April, we went over some of the things required as far as the 2020 census. Before I go into that, let me just say this title, initial meeting on changes to the Scotts Cooperative Agreement for adding the city of Oswald to the Scotts Policy Committee. Make a horrible movie title.
It's way too long.
Alone. And I thought of calling it just so, here comes Oswald. So today I'm going to go back on some 2020 census review that we covered in April. Review the existing Scotts Cooperative Agreement and bylaws, review some important federal regulations on MPOs and redesignations if that has to happen. We have some overview of other MPOs and their board compositions that is in the packet, and then some next steps and ideas to consider. So on the census, census delineated urban areas after the 2020 census, used to be called urbanized areas, that changed to urban areas. And it's based on the decennial census block data, so they get down to the block level. And they say, hey, this is the new Salem urban area. It's used nationwide and there's little or no opportunity to contest the results. We talked about that in April. Onsl's coming in. We have to adjust other boundaries as part of this. So there's a kind of a picture. All the blue shaded areas are part of the Salem urban area, including Turner, including Almsville, and a teeny tiny part of the Staten urban growth boundary, not the city of Staten, in the far corner. And this is, they have these because of like hops and jumps, which we won't review again. So the steps we need to take is revise the federal urban area boundary. That process is starting soon. We're talking to the TAC next month about where that boundary might be. We talked a little bit at our April meeting as well. Once we have the boundary, we have to go into the functional classifications of any roads we added to the boundary, so what their designation is. But today we're talking about these two items that are highlighted. The change to the staff cooperative agreement as a result of ONSL being added. We also have SCAT's bylaws that may need some adjusting, TAC bylaws also. And then eventually we'll have to submit various things to ODOT and Federal Highway, primarily number 1 and number 2. So the cooperative agreement, which is in your packet, was agreed to way back in 1987, which you can kind of tell by the font used back then. It was agreed in 87. It was concurred by Governor Goldschmidt, which is required for any kind of new MPO. And it was amended once in 2003 when we added Turner as the 8th voting member. So you can see we don't do this very often. I just wanted to know this cooperative agreement, we don't go over it very often. It's in the Unified Planning Work Program as an appendix, and every so often I bring it up saying, hey, we have this cooperative agreement, here's what it is. When we have a new member join staffs, I go over the cooperative agreement with that new member so they understand the representation, the unanimous vote, et cetera, et cetera. So just to go a little bit into this cooperative agreement, parts A and some of these parts are not that interesting, but A and B, administrative services, the COG provides that. COG retains responsibility for contracts. The voting membership's an important one. It basically says that each jurisdiction has one member that has one vote. Part D says policy committee is responsible for bylaws and operating procedures, developing the plan, the TIP, the work program, and other actions. Now, the important one I always like to highlight is the process for adopting the plan and the TIP. Our process and our agreement says approval requires a unanimous vote, so we can't have a majority vote, unanimous vote. If there's less than a unanimous vote, then it goes, the document, whether it's the TIP or the plan, would go to Marion County, Polk County, Salem, Kaiser, and the Transit District for their boards to discuss it and then come back to the policy committee if that's ever necessary. In my 30 years, that's never been necessary, fortunately. We've always handled things here as a policy committee. We've never had to go back to the individual boards to resolve anything. Yeah, another detail is all members in attendance must vote in favor of the action. Now that in attendance has been important because sometimes one policy member has not really supported something in a plan or a TIP, and they begrudgingly either vote, okay, I'll support it, or they say, I just can't quite support it, but I'll leave the room so you guys can approve it. That's happened maybe once or twice in my 30 years, just once.
I can think of
one time.
Was it Sam?
Yes.
Yeah, without any names.
Thank you.
Definitely remember one time.
Yeah,
So-
it's extremely rare.
Right.
Let's gently shut the door when you left.
It's got it closer, so.
Did. Section 8 says the review of the cooperative agreement calls for review every 5 years. But that's really not been the practice. We include it in the UPWP every year. We talk about it. No one really wants to bring it up and say, oh, I want to review it and go delve into it. I think people have let it be as it is. And then it's only, like I said, it's only been modified once to add Turner in 2003 as a voting member. No other changes were made to the agreement when Turner was added. And when Turner was added, the city wasn't even asked to be a signer of the agreement. And the school district, by the way, is a voting member, but also not a signer of the agreement, which, as I was looking through that, they don't have to be. Not everyone in the agreement has to be a signer. When you have MPOs that have like 30 members, some of those members are not signers to the agreement, they are representing, like, let's say, a transit district, or maybe a major employer, but they're not a signer of the agreement. So it's not necessary for Turner to be a signer, or even Onslow to be a signer. That's gonna be up to us, whether they want to sign it or not. That's the details. But to add Onslow, the major members, the 2 counties and the 2 cities in the district will have to sign off on adding Onslow one way or another.
I'm sure.
Commissioner?
So, Mike, how did the school district get on here? Do they even come to these meetings? I've never seen them.
Well, Maria.
Maria.
Hi, Kevin.
Oh, is that?
Nice to meet you.
Huh?
Hi, Kevin. Nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah. So, if we're gonna add Turner, because Turner and, or we're gonna add Almsville, Almsville and Turner are Cascade School District. So, would there be why is Salem Kaiser School District, and would we want to consider adding another school district that's represented by those 2?
That's a good question. I wasn't around in '87 when the school district was invited to be part of SCATS. And over the years, actually, we gave you a list of all the members in the packet, and we've had membership in the school district except for 3 years in 06, 07, and 08. But we've had representation in this from them. So that is up to you, I suppose. If that was something you desired, we can discuss it. Let's see. Then we have some bylaws I'm gonna go through.
A follow-up question? Do we have time? So Maria, what's the benefit to you by being here? School district.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, with the Safe Routes to School programs to help us expand, it's obviously safe routes for our students to get to our schools, but also we are, I think, like one of the largest taxing entities here in the area. I think even bigger than the city of Salem. So we have like a pretty large demographic represented through us.
If you look at the federal regs, they talk about major transportation providers. They should be considered to be on these boards, and it's the school district, school buses, etc.
Okay. So maybe a point of clarification, if major transportation, so let's just say Turner, Almsville School District, they have transportation too, right?
It's all through Cascade.
Yeah, right,
System.
Cascade,
Yeah, but they're
Cascade High
based
School,
out of
but I think they
Roseville.
contract that out. I don't think they have their
Yes.
own buses. So would it be the school district would be the representative, or would it be the contractor be the representative?
No, I'd have to really think about that,
Okay.
and I don't know.
We
Don't have
should
a good answer.
probably be prepared for that.
So just for reference, this is similar to a situation I was in Tiger, where I stood up a Safe Routes to School program. And we spoke with the school district, because the school district had a separate contract with the school transit.
Excuse me, Mark, we can't hear you at all. I can't hear you. Could you speak up just a little bit?
Just mentioning that in Tigard, similar situation where the school district was the representative for Safe Route to School, and they acknowledging that they had a separate contract with First Student to provide student transit.
Thank you.
So like I said, I'm gonna go through these bylaws. They aren't all that different than the cooperative agreement. They were also adopted in '87 and amended in 2003. Membership's the same as the cooperative agreement. Information about quorum, the duties of the chair and the vice chair, that we follow for our meetings, Oregon open meeting laws and Robert's Rule of Orders. For motions and majority votes, some motions. These bylaws can be amended. It happened many times. And they will require some updating. For example, it says newspaper notification will be used for meetings. We don't do that. We put things on the web and our webpage. So we'll have to modify those bylaws as part of this process. Okay, this is important. So what do the federal regs say about MPOs? There's a whole section you can read, and I can pull it up if you need to. It's this 450.310, and it has about 2 pages of what all this means. But the important ones for us is that redesignation by the governor is not required when simply adding members to the MPO that represent new units of general purpose local government from expansion of the metropolitan planning area. So we're expanding the metropolitan planning area by adding Almsville. And if we add a new member of Almsville, we could simply add them to the cooperative agreement, and we don't have to be redesignated by the governor. It's a fairly simple add. The same thing we did with Turner. Same process. Now, the federal regs say that if we will have to be redesignated by the governor, and it's required whenever an MPO proposes to make substantial changes, and I underline these things. Changes to the proportion of voting members, if that was a change that happened, or a substantial change in decision-making authority or procedures. So if we go into the charter, the cooperative agreement, and we make other changes like this, then we'll have, and they're substantial, we'll have to get redesignated by the governor. So keep that in mind when we're having those discussions. Now, staff did a paper on MPO compositions in Oregon, other MPOs, and some other states. And you can read all the details of that if you haven't looked at it before. Just high level, a number of MPOs are like us: Albany, Bend, Rogue Valley, Walla Walla. They all have one voting representative for each government on their board. Central Lane, Corvallis, and Middle Road have some proportional representation. For example, Corvallis has more votes than Adair Village and Philomath and Benton County. I think there's one other member I can't remember.
What did you say, Philomath?
Philomath, Adair Village, Benton County, the district court transit, right?
OSU is a member, but not a voting board member.
Yeah. And then as far as our research has told us, MPOs often seek to reach consensus first before making any decisions by a vote. We can talk to them some more about their specific processes, but from what we're understanding, even when they have disproportionate voting, it doesn't always mean that they're doing that for every decision. It might be, only sometimes. They try to reach consensus most of the time. And there's some examples from some other states described in the staff paper. There are some pretty elaborate compositions out there, just to kind of show you that it's done a number of ways throughout the country. So with that, my last 2 slides, next steps as I see as staff, we want to start with the goal of truly wanting to understand the points of view as we get into the discussion. What are the members' points of view about including Almsville in the cooperative agreement and anything else? From each member, we want to get a sense of their concerns, if any, to consider as part of the topic, not just jump to solutions. We want to discuss what works well or not well currently in the MPO decision process. And as I just mentioned, we don't want to focus too much on predetermined solutions at this first meeting. I think this first meeting is to kind of lay the groundwork, hear what concerns there may or may not be, and leave any potential solutions to a future meeting when we have time to think about it, digest it, ask staff questions. We have time to do this. Our timeline is, there's no rush to do this. We want to do it by this end of this year if possible, but there's no real rush. I'll throw in 2 other ideas to consider. 2 quotes that I pulled. We each have a piece of the truth, and we make our best decisions when we pull all our pieces together. Meaning, as far as sharing concerns, let's listen to that advice when we're hearing what people are saying about the MPO and how they want to see it go forward. And then I pulled this from the book I'm reading right now. A good group decision is an investment in social equity. People feel a greater sense of standing and respect for each other when they do that. In addition, a group as a whole becomes stronger and more highly functioning. Just something to keep in mind when we're talking about how, as a group, we pull together, not just thinking about any individual jurisdiction, but how do we make this group stronger going forward? So with all that in front of you, I will end there and leave it to the chair to take us from there.
All right, thank you very much. It's really nice to have the information from our other MPOs around the state. And I think most of you know that there's also the Oregon Municipal Planning Organization Consortium, which is a quarterly meeting between representatives of all the MPOs so we can learn from and collaborate with each other. And that began, oh gosh, it's before 2010. And it's been a really great way to connect with and learn from the other MPOs of the state. So just one question, actually it's a statement. Almsville and becoming part of the MPO is a given. Period. There's no debate there. So it's a matter of the steps to bring Almsville in. That's a given. And while I appreciate that there's not a timeline, the fact is that the census has said this is going to happen. So I think that expediting whatever steps necessary to bring Almsville to full representation here is really respectful. So I would ask us to keep that in mind as we look at the rest of our process. What I'd like to hear now is thoughts as people have been reading about how we conduct our work, looking at our bylaws and the cooperative agreement, and any questions you would like to see explored between now and when we bring a proposal together for the updates that will bring in Almsville. Open the floor. Commissioner?
Well, I'm one to think of the simplest way to get things done and stay efficient, and you just bring them in as another voting member. I mean, that's one simple, I believe that's one simple
Yes.
option, correct?
An option, just like
Without having to change anything else. If you would update
Is
the,
that the quorum?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the simplest thing, just to add them like Turner to as the 9th member of the policy committee. Right.
Then the other questions is, does the school district come in or not? Right, I don't know.
Actually, when we did our last safe routes to school in Almsville, the school district didn't really want to be involved other
Yeah,
than to
so
know what
then-
the plans were, so,
Smaller district, they probably.
yeah.
You could represent.
I'm gonna go to Director, Capacity.
It's okay. Most people struggle with it. I was just wondering if I could get some additional information on like Turner and the school district. So we have voting power, but we don't have to sign the agreement. Like, what does that necessarily like entail? And would that be the case for Almsville as well?
Well, I've looked at the regulations, and I believe probably in '87 that they were following similar language, although regulations change in time. It says that when an MPO is designated, an agreement should be made between the governor and units of general purpose local governments that together represent at least 75% of the affected population, including the largest incorporated city, or in accordance with procedures established by applicable state or local law. So I imagine they looked at the urban area back then, and they said the largest city of Salem. What other local governments make up the population? Obviously Kaiser, Marion County, Polk County. There's something else that says you want to add representation by public transportation. Now, I'll note that that change of the current law, there were MPOs, probably many MPOs, that didn't include public transportation as a voting member. That was a more recent change to the federal regs that now say you have to include public transportation representative on your board. And so things have evolved over time. So it says 75%, meaning you don't have to include every little town, I guess, to form an MPO, at least as part of the agreement. So I would assume they probably follow that. And when we added Turner, I wasn't part of the discussion back in Turner why they weren't added as a signatory, but maybe they just kept it simple. They just re-signed everyone who signed the original agreement, rather than add Turner as a signer to the agreement. Maybe same for the the school district. It wasn't maybe required that the school district be part of it. It was kind of an option as so they invited them but didn't ask them to sign it.
So am I hearing in this question, Director, this Prezi, that bringing back information on all members being signers would be something we'd like to see?
I mean, I think that would be useful, yes. And I think it would also be interesting to know as well with the new federal regulations on the transportation, like having to include like the transportation districts, I guess like more specificity on that. Because I mean, no tea and no shade to Chariots, but I think the school district has like more routes.
Asking the question is appropriate. So yeah, so to bring back information on not only just adding Almsville as a given and the signer options and the question about Cascade School District, and are there other transit providers in the, I mean, remember, we're only dealing with the MPO. So I think Salem Kaiser Chariots is the only one within this area.
So
Okay, Director Carney.
Thanks, Chair Clark. I think that is correct. I think that our services expand to all parts of our metropolitan planning area at this point. Just a process point. So we submit this if we do major revisions, we submit it to ODOT. Is it the Oregon Transportation Commission and governor, or do we send it to the actual governor? Or is OTC like the designee? I just couldn't figure that out.
Those are a lot of good questions.
Maybe the lieutenant governor can send it.
I was not the plan director in 2003, but I imagine in 2003, we worked with ODOT as we amended the agreement. So I believe they also sign off on this, but we didn't have to go to the governor. So we're going to work through the process. But first we have to determine, is it a simple addition or is it something significant which will require the governor? So, and I think we're going to need to talk maybe on some legal issues and look at the regulations. I'll probably have to talk to Federal Highways, get some clarification about who has to be a signer versus who's optional as a signer. The issue about the Cascade School District, we'll have to investigate options for that too. So there's a lot of steps. And this is why my title, going back to my first slide, is initial meeting for this discussion.
Well, I would, to your earlier slides, Mike, where you pointed out that when it was authored, this document was proposed for revision and review every 5 years. And it seems we have not, as a committee, upheld that tenet within. And so it does seem to me that we are overdue for a comprehensive look at this. And I will note for the group that the Transit Board voted unanimously at our meeting last week to support a facilitated process for update to the cooperative agreement and bylaws.
So were there objectives that were included in that recommendation?
There were, though I don't know that they were officially included in the motion, but our discussion was around using a facilitated process with the intention of arriving at a more representative and equitable decision-making process and structure for the metropolitan area.
Okay.
Well, that's why in my last couple of slides, I was hoping some of this discussion would be, what were the maybe concerns brought up that led to that transit board decision to recommend a facilitator, because I think we can bring it up now or we can bring it up later, but I think it's important to get some of these things on the table. So we can better decide things as a group, whether we go down a road with a facilitator or we not a facilitator. So, and that's for obviously the chair and the vice chair and the board to decide.
I'm gonna go to.
Well,
I'll let
if
Director Carney finish. I'll go to.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't know if that was an invitation to clarify. I thought that Mike was asking me a question, so I apologize if I misread. You guys are like a postage stamp here. We reviewed the population breakdown that was shared by SCAT staff with the transit board. And there was concern that some areas that are representing very few people were speaking with as loud a voice as areas or entities that were representing, the vast majority of population within the metropolitan planning area.
So there was looking at one of the potential models being population-based representation versus functional base or some other basis for representation.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Director, Pressy.
This wasn't so much as like an issue that came up ahead of time, but when I was reviewing the documents that staff prepared, I did notice that there's some MPOs that also include tribal representation. So I think that would be interesting to have as well, is like if they fall into the regulations of including, since, I mean, there's a lot of work that can be done for all of us.
That's a good question. The Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde are represented on the Area Commission for Transportation because it's 3-county. And I'm not sure where the intersection is. So I'll have to research that for the MPO area specifically. Good question. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Stapleton. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for having me today. And I know that I'm the newbie here and filling in for Councilor Phillips. This was the issue that he requested me to come and represent his views on. And he stated that he was likewise in agreement with the recommendation listed on the agenda to have a facilitator through the process. I can't go into all of the different ways that he has reached that conclusion because he and I have not spoken to that exactly, but I have heard him speak about this a little bit in the same way that Sadie Carney has as well, with this idea of, population-based idea of representation and process. So that is all I do know about his stance on this, but wanted to bring his voice to the conversation, even though he can't be here today.
Okay. So the other question is, I don't think we'll be able to do this in 2 phases because getting Almsville on board as soon as possible, in my point of view, is to our advantage to get that done, and then also take this more comprehensive look. So I think we'll have to keep a timeline in mind for if we do want to move forward with a facilitated conversation, moving into a weighted population base. There's also other functionalities that can also enter the conversation. I think that's where facilitation can help with framing, because population base is not always the most equitable. And so we'll have to look at it from a variety of points of view. And the background from the other MPOs, I think, is going to be helpful in that conversation. The other is to bear in mind that one of the strengths, we just discussed it earlier, is the structure we have now for lack of a better word, forces everybody to look at projects, planning, and the region as a whole. But it says that all of us need to keep in mind jurisdictions and special districts such as transit and the school district, not just focus on my city and my projects, but think of it more holistically. And by having all the voices around the table needing to be heard, I think it's been a strength for us as a region, as we've looked at our projects and understood how they impact each other, and we can help move them forward. So I would just want to encourage that mindset as well, that we are right now in a place where having everybody at the table, we need to listen to all the voices. Commissioner Cameron?
As the one person who sits in this room representing everybody's citizen that's in this, yes. Except for Polk County. I have not heard from my fellow commissioner, however, I think your comments about looking at the big picture, when I look at a project that's in State Street, that's on State Street, that's in the city of Salem, or it's in the county, it's about the big picture here. And to start saying there's more citizens here or more citizens here, and we should have different weights, I think we start to lose the big picture. We should be looking at the whole stats area. And I'm sorry, Commissioner, I wish I was Commissioner of Polk County too, but I'm gonna be looking at Turner, I'm looking at Almsville, I'm looking at the roads in between there. And it's something that we need to make sure we stay together and have consensus on. And I think my short time on this group, and I subbed for Sam a few times, but he walked out. No. Is that this group has done that. And that's why I was saying at the beginning, just add them, bring them in and keep it simple, and let's keep going unless we have problems down the road. And I have a 1:15 that I have to go to. But that's my input. I don't know why we'd waste time on spending money. Where'd the money come from for the consultant? Who's paying for that?
Well, we have even.
But I don't know why we would waste money on it, but if it's the group, if that's what the group wants to do, I'll leave and you guys can vote.
Part of the reason I brought Scott Datsun in, maybe it's his money. So.
And he just left.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate that. Commissioner Mordhorst?
So I can't let Kevin just upstage me that easy. So I'm telling you, if you take a look at the history of SCATs, this is probably the most successful board in the Willamette Valley, because we all take a look at everybody's needs and we're considerate of everybody, and we're all equal. And that's the biggest thing, is we take a look and we all live here, so we know where our priorities are, and we all have relationships. We can come and discuss them, and we can prioritize them, and we do a great job over all of these years of getting those primary jobs done. Everybody understands the needs for everything, and it's all unique, every one of us. But for me, this is the one board that I truly enjoy, because we have to work together to make things happen. If we wait that, then things change. Now, certain people's got more power, and some people feel left out and they don't have a say, which a lot of boards, it's that way. And I hope we just don't go down that road. This is a great program. I hope we keep it.
There's nothing that says if we do bring in a facilitator that we don't end up with something simple. But if we can agree to do that without a facilitator, we save time and money and move forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So I want to be respectful of the request that we look at facilitation. So I think bringing back to the SCATS Policy Committee in July or August, I don't know what your time frame is, Mike, what our options are, what facilitation could look like, what it would cost, And addressing the questions that have been raised today regarding signers, the additional conversation around the school district, if Cascade is even interested. I mean, they would have to agree that, yeah, we really want to be part of this, or I think Salem Kaiser can represent school district type of transportation issues and so forth and opportunities. So I think that would be a very respectful conversation to have with the leadership there. You'll understand the conversation around the city of Salem and the Chariot's desires to have a conversation around what does equitable representation look like? Should it be population based, or should it remain all voices have a say, that sort of thing? So I think that it's reasonable to have that conversation, and then how far the board as a whole wants to take it. What are the advantages and disadvantages of that? Recognizing that the special districts that are included very intentionally in SCATs, the Chariots and the school district, have been important members of this conversation since I've been doing this work, because there's a perspective on service provision and transportation options that we all are keeping in mind as we're looking at our projects. The Verda project, for example, is one of many that includes looking at our schools, looking at transit that runs along those routes, making sure that it's very comprehensive. So, and I mean, you're going to hear it from me. I've really felt that the collaborative approach, even when we've faced extremely difficult conversations, and we've had some whoppers in my career, at the end of the day, we've ended up stronger because we had to sit down and listen to each other. So that's my plug. That's my box. I'm going to go to Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark, and appreciate your sentiments around sort of working cooperatively and listening to one another. Absolutely agree with that. I just wanted to flag, I didn't hear you mention, and I wanted to make sure the notes and future action reflected Director Hinojos Pressey's desire to consider the tribes.
Oh, yes.
In addition to the group. Thanks.
Yep.
I got that down.
Mike's got it. Yep. I didn't have little star by that on my notes. Thank you. And the two that we would be talking about is Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. I think they're the two main tribes in this area. I'm not sure which one intersects with us.
I'm gonna need to really have a discussion with ODOT. They do a lot of tribal consultation. They probably have a lot more interaction with the tribes, and I would heavily lean on them for help in discussing both, as well as what we are either required to do or what's optional to do for that whole discussion about tribal member government and RMPO.
Yeah.
Me, it hasn't come up before, so this is kind of, although it has come up in WAC, so not like it has never come up on any boards, but for this board, it's never. So.
No, I think it would be a fantastic add if that would be a possibility. The tribal involvement at the ACT over the years has been significant, and especially looking at some of the projects in and around Grand Ronde, but also just discussing how transportation options are very important for the tribal communities as a whole. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity. Do I have in order? I'm gonna go to Lyle was first, Commissioner Mordhorst, and then to
So for SCATs, none of the tribes have any ground within the SCATs boundary. We work really well with them in the county because they're in Polk County. When we're around their region, they're great to work with. They are a part of MWAC because it's a regional thing that they're tied within. But for our little group here in SCATs, there is no really tie-in for either of the tribes to join us. And I know they're very busy.
Yeah, Siletz owns a tremendous, Siletz and Grand Ronde own land within the SCATs boundary.
Oh, I guess so, up around the Kaiser Station, huh?
Yeah, right in Kaiser, and then across in cities in Marion County. So
Yeah.
it's significant.
Yep. Good.
That's why
Good
we
correction.
should probably both work with ODOT, any other MPO that this may affect. I don't know, we're not the only MPO on historical tribal lands, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to maybe talk to you, Mark, about this more about, has this come up in the other MPOs? And if not, what do we want to do?
I would quickly share that this did come up during Federal Highway Administration's visit to the Central Lane MPO as part of their periodic review. And the response that the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower and Siuslaw do have interactions with respect to public transportation connections, particularly between Eugene and Florence, respective link services.
Okay, and just to also add to that, when we've had our planning review, Federal Highways discussion, they have strongly emphasized that we beef up as much as possible our consultation with the tribal governments. And so we have revised our document a couple times and working with the tribes to really nail down how we're going to do consultation with them when we do our TIP, do our plan. And so those consultation document is done and implemented that. They haven't always provided any comments, but we have done our best to consult with them about our process. So just to give you an idea that we have at least opened that door for the discussion.
I'm gonna go to Anna Henson.
I just want to, I guess, kind of tag along in the fact that I think we need to at the minimum reach out to the Grand Ronde tribe. When we did our outreach for the draft 24-27 step, we initially presented projects we thought, were in the area that they'd have concern about. And they actually came back and said, no, we have concern about all of your projects. And then gave us a map of areas of interest for them. And it's basically all of Oregon and California and part of Washington. So I think I agree that we need to at least have a discussion to include them. I will say that I do know that they're really, the staffing issue is really low for them. And I don't know if they'd be able to come to a meeting, but it's at least worth offering it up. And maybe they can join us. I know we don't get, maybe they can join us virtually, excuse me. But I know we don't get a lot, regular participation at the ACT from Grand Ronde, and I would like to see that change. But I don't know how we can encourage them to do that if they don't have bodies. So that's all. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's tribal council member Michael Langley is now representing the Grand Ronde, and just for the record, the chair of the SLEPs lives in Kaiser.
Oh.
Dolores Pixley, and she's readily available when I call her, so she's very responsive, totally fabulous. All right, Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. And that is amazing information. I'm so lucky for you. It might be an opportunity for us as a group, and I think in coordination or only with coordination from the tribes, to think about what meaningful participation from the tribes means and looks like. If that is a regular call from SCAT staff that fits into their schedule, so they're not trying to fit into ours. We have been exploring at DLCD different ways of supporting participation from, in particular, community-based and community-serving organizations as a way of informing our policy development efforts, but not in the more traditional ways of, providing comment to commission, but meeting them kind of where they are and on their schedule and on their terms. So possibly something worth our discussion as we look forward at how we can involve the appropriate people in our decision-making moving forward.
Like it. All right, so we've got a list of materials that we are interested in seeing at a future SCATS meeting, and we'll leave it to Mike and his team to decide when they're going to be able to have that ready for us. Latest is August, though, correct?
Probably not.
No?
That's a lot of items now on
Okay.
my menu to work through, so
Okay,
I can't
September.
promise August.
Okay.
Because I was gonna take some time off in August, so I think after 30 years, I might deserve it. So, yeah, I have a lot of things that we've discussed today, and a lot of things to talk about as far as ODOT and delve into the federal regs, so it's gonna be taking time.
Okay. And again, this could be done in two parts. Just because we only do it once every 40, 50 years, doesn't mean we can't do it again. Bringing Almsville in is the number one thing to get done right now. And then if we need to do it in two parts, I don't think that's going to be too onerous. If folks are agreeable to taking this in one or two steps. So I just want to keep that forefront as well, because you pass the president, right? So I just want to make sure that also gets the voice of the people sooner than later. Dylan? Comments?
No, we're just trying to learn everything we can because we haven't had to be involved yet. So that's what I'm here, is just to learn and here to help. And we don't have lots of projects right now, so.
And I did meet with your city administrator,
Yeah.
Ron Harding, is that right?
Yep.
5-6 weeks ago, just to go over this issue, this topic.
All right. This has been a great conversation. Thank you all. Look forward to our next steps. Let's then go to item G, which is tip modifications.
Yeah, so that's me again, and there is a handout that's included in the packet. I'm just gonna duplicate it on the screen here. Hopefully I can full screen that. Okay. This might be kind of hard for folks to read. It's very small, but it is in the packet, printed as well. This is just a list of the tip modifications since May 2023. So these are the administrative staff level changes that were made. There was an advance of a construction phase for a Polk County striping and marking improvement, a ODOT lighting project, which was pushed back from 24 to 26 to do some of the work. My understanding is those were for kind of like balancing staff time to be able to complete some of the work. Items 3 through 4, or sorry, 3, 4, and 5. Those were reductions to our Salem area MPO planning dollars. Our total amount that goes into the work plan of about $20,000 each year, and it's just being shifted to a different project for the implementation of our electronic tip database, which is something that SCATS and the Central Lane and Metro MPOs are working on to develop essentially a system for implementing our inputting our amendments to the tip into an online database that directly talks with the STIP FP system. So we've dedicated funding towards that and working on the project. And then number 6 is the addition of funds going into that electronic tip system. And the last one was just a small name change to the Verda Lane project. It had been Dearborn to Salem Parkway. It's been updated to Ascot Lane, which is the correct extent of the project. So no action required, just changes that have taken place in the last month.
Any questions on any of the tip modifications? Thank you for that update. Very much appreciated. Other business, the Metropolitan Transportation and Safety Action Plan, MTSAP, steering committee is meeting in July.
July 13th.
13th.
We have a date.
All right. July 13th. And how is that project coming along?
We are making progress. We have a steering committee, as you said. We're scheduling the next project management team. The consultant is crunching through numbers. I'm crunching through data from our survey. So, you know, it's multiple plates and spinning, but things are happening with that project.
Fantastic.
And I know the city has news about something similar
Yes.
application.
Yeah, we applied for a
Related.
Safe Streets for All grant. We approved it at last night's council meeting. And we're gonna be going for about $3 million, which would be money to do the Vision Zero planning. And then also to implement a 20 Years Plenty program in our neighborhood streets citywide. And that also includes money for education process and then also more trailers for speed trailers. This. I think that includes it on-
Before and after evaluations.
Yes, so great news. I mean, it's just a grant application. So fingers crossed that we get it, but I'm very, very excited and thankful for all staff's time to get it pulled together.
Well, you guys nailed some safe routes to school construction grants. I saw that in the announcement that came out yesterday. Yeah, I think that
I
was.
saw them again too, but I think there's a little bit of old news. I don't know.
Well, we, I mean, it's not that it's necessarily old news, it's just, you know, we know that we're on the list, and so then we sort of treat it as if we have it, and so then when they actually announce it, it's sort of like, yeah, we already knew that. But it's, if I'm remembering correctly, there's 2 crossings and 1 small sidewalk infill.
Mhm. So way to go, because I was looking through the list to see what was in our area. I'm going Salem, Salem, Salem. Fantastic, nice job.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of work to do. Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark, and exciting news about the safe routes and the safety initiatives. Good way to go, City of Salem. Thank you. Just a question for Mike. Do you have a time certain? I'll put it on my calendar right now for the safety committee, or is it in my inbox? I should just go look there
Oh,
for the 13th.
I can look it up.
3:30 to 5.
Yeah, thank you. I should know that top of my head. Why don't I know that?
3:30 to 5:30.
3:30
Okay,
to 5:30.
I'll be there with bells on. Thank you.
MWACT is working on the 2-year area commission for transportation work plan. So the steering committee met last week with our initial conversation with Brandon, and it was Mayor Woods and I were able to make it, and who else was? Anna was there. So it was a good first conversation around some of the key components that will go into that work plan. And see if we can assist the Oregon Transportation Commission in figuring out what to do with us. We have the 12 different acts, and they got to figure out what to do, and it's important because the 12 acts actually cover all of Oregon. Urban, rural, north, south, coastal, upper desert. That's too powerful to let go. So I'm really pleased that they are working with us to figure out what it looks like from here. So stay tuned on that. The Oregon Transportation Commission meeting will be also on July 13th in Pendleton. So before you tune in to the MTSAP, jump in on the OTC meeting, see what's going on. All of those are hybrid meetings that you can watch online. And then September 14th in Eugene, November 9th in Portland area. Our next policy committee meeting will be on July 25th, same bat time, same bat station, and the next TAC will be on July 11th. Mike.
And I have one addition, and we'll send something out later, so you don't have to write this down right now, but the Oregon 22 Rick Rio Road to Doakes Ferry Road Safety Project has an online open house. It's open now. I looked at it yesterday. It's open till July 21st with an in-person meeting on July 12th from 4 to 7 at the Polk County Fairgrounds. So we'll send out information to our policy committee, our technical committee. We've already sent out information to our interested parties list yesterday, and we're going to put things on other media that we have to let people know that the open house is available. But it's a really well done open house, including a special video by the project director Kumar And Lyle Borhorst is also on that video. So good job, Commissioner. I liked your video.
Thanks. Wasn't too bad then, huh?
No, it's good to see a local official on an ODOT project saying, please come to the open house and let us know what you think. So I really like that addition, personally.
There's a great interactive map that you can switch options off and on to see.
That's right.
And you can comment on the map. You can also do a short survey with comments.
Right. Thank you. There's a survey, a comment map, right? So they're really allowing people to comment whatever way they want to about the project. And
I would love to see everybody on this board go in and leave a
Yeah.
comment.
And it
would
is
be
within the
excellent.
Scouts boundary currently, unless we change the boundary. But it currently is, it's that area or part of that area is within the Scouts boundary. So we want to make sure people have an opportunity to know about it, learn about it, provide comments back to the project team, etc.
It's a hugely important safety project. So definitely want to see people weigh in on that. Thank you very much. And also want to add on that OMPOC will be meeting on the 28th of July. So I have it on my calendar. Traditionally, we have somebody from either Commissioner Morthorst or Chariot's Director Carney. Are either of you available that morning to be, and it's gonna be virtual. We haven't gone back to in-person yet. I don't know that we're going to.
I unfortunately have a conflict with a meeting of the Land Conservation and Development Commission.
Okay. Commissioner Morthorst?
That's July 13th,
No, the 28th.
28th of July.
Yep.
I've got it on my calendar at 9 o'clock.
Say what?
Is it 9 o'clock?
Yep,
I got it on my calendar.
fabulous. All right, we will see you in the Zoom box. Is there anything else for the good of the order today? Everybody remember the Marion County Fair coming up, and have a wonderful, safe, and enjoyable Independence Day holiday. And we'll see you all next month. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Bye.